Welcome to my dad's car. Enjoy!
Welcome to My Dad's Car, a podcast discussing our personal relationship with automotive nostalgia. And you know what? It doesn't even have to be about your dad's car. It can be your mum's, your grand's, your parents', guardians, or even a neighbour's. If it made an impression, let's talk about it. How you doing, Joe?
Yeah, fine.
Nice to meet you, Joe.
Nice to meet you too, John.
Cool. Yeah, welcome along. Thank you very much, Joe, for joining us. And just a word of thanks, really. Obviously, we put out the thing about My Dad's Car, the podcast starting, and you messaged pretty kind of soon saying kind of like the idea and you're on board with it. So what's, what resonated with you, really?
I think in the last sort of, 18 months, everyone's got a podcast, right? In terms of what it is. I work in marketing. So actually finding a niche or a way to talk to different audiences, I think is quite a rare thing that people actually find. There's always the next thing.
Yeah.
And if you think from an enthusiast point of view or a car point of view, kind of supercar stuff or Porsche stuff or anything like that, actually something that more kind of revolved around memories and kind of how you started that and felt something genuinely different. But I think, as I said to you, Andy, something that has the context of being really kind of universal without any form of elitism to it. That really resonated with me. And that's kind of coming from someone that's been fortunate enough to own some pretty cool cars, right? But I actually like the really sentiment kind of point of it that just kind of leapt out at me thinking, yeah, that's cool. I like that. And then just to build on that, I think in one of the other podcasts you talked around, like, do you know what? It's not necessarily your dad. It could be your neighbor. It could be your mum. It could be your stepdad, etc.
Yeah.
That kind of liberal approach to what the essence of My Dad's Car meant, I really liked. So that's kind of why it just jumped out at me. It just didn't feel the usual sort of willy waving, for want of a better description.
That's cool. Yeah, I think, we want this to be open to everyone, and hopefully we will get, more stories about kind of mum's cars. We want, some kind of female input as well as male input. It's not just about how many Rolls Royces, Ferraris, or whatever you've got in your garage. It's not about necessarily your car. It's about, the memories of you growing up. And
no, exactly that. I mean, my wife isn't really into cars. She tolerates it, but she does remember, like, her mum had was a single parent, but had a 944 that she sold on a day when it was sunny because it leaked. So little things like that are just quite interesting. So
absolutely.
She sounds like a car dealer to me.
Yeah. She has had some interesting cars, actually. But
what's your earliest car memory? Like, whether it's your dad or mum or whatever.
I guess the earliest car memory isn't kind of full scale. So I grew up in like a masonette in southeast London, as you can probably tell from my voice. And we used to have like really rough carpet. And this is going to sound really strange, but I used to play with like little Matchbox toys and stuff like that. And I just remember I always used to go through the knees of my trousers constantly, apparently. So that was a real running, funny thing, right in the house. But from an early, like, actual automobile is in a car, I think my dad, it was the only company car he'd ever had in my life, because I think it was just after that. So I'm 35. He had a Cavalier GSI, and I distinctly remember somewhere over, I can't remember what A road it was, going particularly quickly with my nan or gran in it, and it freaking her out a little bit. But it's the weird, like, there was a particular type of cloth in a Vauxhall at that time, that quite a thick grey cloth that I can just remember quite distinctly. So that's probably my earliest memory of kind of being in a car, and kind of a memory that I can really kind of have back.
I always remember the headrests, I think, in those cars, or in some form of Cavalier. They, like, as you said, they've got that thick cloth around them, but they're kind of like a big sort of Cheerio on the top of a seat, basically. That's what it sort of reminded me of.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. So I can remember as a kid, like, if my dad's bald, he won't mind me saying this, and you put your hand through it, just like, I used to hit him on the head and stuff like that, which I got in trouble for. But yeah, that's definitely the earliest memory. And I could probably, it could tell you everything about that car. It's just ingrained in my memory from the kind of slab wheels that it had with like the sort of 4 spokes. I just remember very specifically, it was a GSI. It wasn't a 4x4. He was very particular about it. I don't know why. Just was.
What colour?
It was a really dark meteor sort of grey sort of colour. It was quite tasteful. If I'm, being honest. He certainly undid that later in life, but we can come on to that later.
I had a friend with a Cav GSI actually, and same colour. And that was quite a weapon, actually. They went well.
Yeah, we had a bit of a Vauxhall thing in the family, really. So my nan had a Mark 1, I think, Astra GTE, so a red one.
Nice.
And my dad's brother had this got stolen multiple times, but an Astra GTE Champion Edition with the torque dash, which gave torque rather than revs.
Okay.
But people just used to nick it for the Connolly leather that was in it. Nick the leather and then just try and give the car back. So, the joys of Southeast London, right?
So your dad went from... What does your dad do?
My dad, honestly, I'm a walking cliche.
Secret agent?
No, so he is run design consultancies all his life, really. So he's much cooler than I am. Like, I work in online retail, like sort of marketing. He is, a lot of my mates think he's much cooler. So, yeah, so that's what he did from that. And then strange move from the Cavalier when the whole company car tax thing changed. We got Fiat Panda. So that is like a jump, isn't it, in terms of that? So, yeah, that was and I can distinctly remember going camping in that car a lot.
The little square things.
Yeah. We had two at one point. Quite
high, weren't they? Always quite raised. Yeah, I think they're four-wheel drive. Some of them, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, some of them. He would kill for one of those now, but they're not ULEZ, and he's already got one car that isn't ULEZ. So that's annoying as it is. But yeah, little red one, and then later on, after another car, had a little burgundy Panda Sky, which had two Webasto sunroofs, which. Yeah, so we used to go camping down to New Forest and that. So, and we one would have the sort of tent, and the other one would have like the food and stuff in it. And I'm an only child, so I would swap at fleet services between my dad and my mum, just to kind of in which car we went in for a little adventure. So they were good cars though. They're good little fun things. Went everywhere in them. Not very safe, I don't think, but
no.
Yeah, I remember driving one. I did some work experience at a body shop while I was at college. And I used to run stuff around like to car dealers and back. And one of my journeys was in a Fiat Panda. It was only about 6 or 7 miles, but it was scary. Slightly less scary than the Bedford Rascal I had to deliver kind of a few days after. But there were
oh Christ, Jesus,
yeah.
I can imagine. Yeah, terrifying. Burgundy Panda, the Sky, I can remember was a Panda 1000 Fire from an engine point of view. And it's just like such an ironic statement because there was no fire going on there whatsoever.
My friend had a Fiat Uno, actually. That had the fire engine. And his Fiat Uno was red as well, actually, is it?
Yeah, the early Fiat thing was a real designer thing. One of his best mates had I'm not going to pronounce this wrong, a Fiat Tipo, basically a 16 valve, but it was a Secchi Valve or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Can't remember what the actual thing was, yeah. That was a good car, very quick at the time, sort of thing. And then another one had a 130 TC Strada, Fiat Strada with the twin Webers on it. Again, too fast for the structure and the integrity of that, but yeah, grew up around that sort of stuff.
I think the Uno Turbo, that was quite a spicy car, wasn't it? I can remember back in the day, like 0 to 60 times. I think that was maybe front runner in the hot hatch, sort of that era. Yeah, it was up there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't have been in a straight line, would it? Because it would have torque steered across the road
into a ditch. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, they're great, those things now. But a lot of pain if you want to go back and kind of trying to get one back on the road. I think Russ loves them.
Yeah.
So you went Cavalier GSI, Fiat Pandas. That's a bit of a step, isn't it? And then
then this he'll kill me for this. He likes not to talk about this car. A laser green 205 GTI dimmer cab.
Oh.
So yeah, exactly. Which
did he do a bit of hairdressing back in the day then, or?
Yeah, he'd love to say that. Yeah, for a bald man, it looks a bit like Phil Mitchell. But yeah, so we got that, and I can remember being obsessed with it, just thinking it was just the coolest thing ever. But we went to look at quite a few. I can remember we bought it off a golf, like a driving range in the Docklands. I'm quite good with memories. I don't know why, so I remember very specific things. Funnily enough, the bloke who sold it to us did have a long blonde ponytail, which maybe he was a hairdresser. But like there was loads of like Turbo Technics ones, with like the old boost gauges which you could turn up and stuff like that. And I can distinctly remember trying one of those with a set of Champion wheels or something like that on it. But it just being genuinely terrifying, like, and just thinking, even as a kid, I know this isn't a good idea. So of course a chop top 205 with a fiberglass body kit on it is definitely the way to go. Sadly that car got crashed into. So
was that kind of Max Power era? That was kind of the thing.
Yeah 100%.
Was your dad into that scene?
No, not at all. But he grew up modifying minis, so he had like seamless mini. I think he had one of the first 13 100 conversions, which he did in his garage with his granddad.
Cool.
Up until when they were because that car used to get stolen from Dartford all the time, and apparently bought back when people went on dates. But yeah, it had the like twin Silexes on it or something like that. I don't know much about minis, but so kind of from that era. And yeah, it's the same dimmer body kit that was on, I think, the first ever issue of Max Power. There was a purple 205 on that.
Yeah.
It was the green version of that with the original wheels, etc., which are now worth God knows how much. But yeah, so that was quite a cool car. I quite like that. And a massive big bore Magnex exhaust on it, which I remember being deafeningly loud. Yeah. Good car.
They used to do the 309 Goodwood edition. Do you remember that? That was a nice bit of kit. And it had like a wooden steering wheel, which I don't know why they put that in that vehicle. It wasn't very in keeping with the rest of it.
Yeah. Worth a few quid, those.
Yeah, and a wooden gear knob. Yeah. Like Beechwood sort of thing. Yeah, I don't think there's many of those around anymore.
There is you can probably find it on the internet actually, because I've got a bit of a French car penchant. We still actually have a 205, but there was a 309 Goodwood dimmer, which is a pretty special looking thing. Like it looks almost like a scaled down SEC hammer, if for want of a better description, because it's shorter but still got the flared arches on it, but it still had all the wood and stuff in it. So yeah, it's a crazy thing.
But it's a nice colour, wasn't it?
Yeah.
A nice sort of greeny, turquoisey.
Yeah, dark green colour. Yeah, with a little Goodwood badge on the back right hand corner. Yeah, cool car.
Did you have a say in his cars? I don't know what sort of age you were around that kind of time. Obviously, you're testing them out with him.
So if I think when he got the dimmer, I probably would have been 7 or 8, I think. Not a say, no, but I was very enthusiastic, like a real thing in it. So I think he liked to get things that we would have fun in. I think he missed the Cavalier. When they obviously sold the Cavalier and went to the Pandas, there wasn't much fun there, right, in terms of that. So I don't think the 205, we definitely did a lot of stuff together in it, which then later on in life, I would definitely say I 100% have had a say, probably some things he regrets that I pushed him into. But yeah, definitely, I think from that point of view, it's something we definitely started to do together, because I think some of the biggest things I've got are memories of things that we've done together. So probably not consciously, but definitely subconsciously, I would say, yeah. And
then I think now he's got a 205 now as well. Is that right?
Yeah, so we still have. So I basically, the French thing took on, ended up with a load of 106 rallies, which is a story for another day. I had an accident in a 306 GTI 6 that got crashed into, and then used that money to buy a 205 GTI, my own one, which I spent a huge amount of money on with him, did up, loved, etc. Then sold it. Then we realised together that actually we quite missed having one, but you want a good one. So yeah, we found one up in Wales that's like, it's one owner. 60,000 miles, but then we just went a bit over the top with it, and you know, Andy, what other cars he's got. That's the only car that sits in a garage, in a heated garage.
Oh, okay, wow.
It's had a full glass out refurb at Pug One Off in Northampton, so it's pretty perfect. But the sort of relationship we had, like, so it's still got the original tape player in it, so I went and found all of his, the Christmas after he got it, all of his favourite albums on cassette that weren't re-records, which cost me an absolute fortune. Like, AC/DC on cassette is actually quite expensive, believe it or not. So we love it. It's a brilliant little thing. So yeah, it's cherry red. It's got a sunroof, which some people don't like, but actually you're not really that worried about shell flex in a 205 in 2023, are you? So just a good little car, yeah. I really enjoy it.
So you touched on music there, Joe. AC/DC, what sort of other stuff did your dad like to have in the car? Was that kind of run the mill?
Oh, eclectic, really, really eclectic. So my first gig was AC/DC when I think I was like 8 or something. He took me to, I can't remember where it was, but like this is, he'll hate me for this. So anything from AC/DC and Metallica through to like George Michael, Ladies and Gentlemen, to Madonna's Immaculate Collection, like that was the kind of stream with a bit of Eurythmics.
Are you sure he wasn't a hairdresser in his part-time?
And then a really weird, one of my strongest music memories is a very strange band, which is way before my time, called Deep Forest, which is a bit like a weird trancey house sort of stuff. I can just remember driving along kind of Milford-on-Sea, that sort of area, kind of listening to that sort of stuff, specifically in the 123s, which I'm sure you asked me about later, or the Pandas, sort of thing. But so music was always a thing. It was always on in the car. And it was always on in the house, actually. There wasn't a kind of a thing from house to car. It wasn't like, oh, these are different things. He definitely always had it. But he's the difference between going in the car between him and my mum. My mum used to always make sure she had like one track she'd listen to over and over again on the out, whereas he's very specific album all the way through. It's weird how you remember those things, isn't it?
Did you have any say on the music being played, or was it solely his?
As we got older, yeah, definitely. So, but I'm very much a product of his taste. So even as a kid, like, I was massively into Thin Lizzy. I played guitar for a long time. Well, I still do. I'm just rubbish compared to what I used to be. So, yeah, Thin Lizzy, Guns N' Roses, AC/DC, a lot of stuff like that. Of course, the usual stuff of that time. So I can remember actually being on, I think, half term and being sent round to get when Be Here Now came out, the Oasis album in '97.
Nice.
And we only had a tape player and everyone else had a CD. And I can remember in the office having to asking my dad, why have we got a cassette, whereas everyone else has a CD thing for it.
Humiliating.
So it's weird what you remember, isn't it? Yeah. So, but yeah, definitely. I think as I got older, like I'd want to hear Paradise City again and again, especially in the 914, and he'd get a little bit bored and sort of say we need a different CD on now. But yeah, so definitely had a choice in it.
So yeah, obviously you touched on the 914. I think your dad's dabbled with some Alphas as well, isn't he?
Yeah, and I've crashed one.
It's a grown-up Fiat, isn't it? An Alpha?
Yes, it is. They're pretty much the same thing. So
it's like the paid version of the app, isn't it? And the Fiat's like the light
exactly,
version.
Yeah. It's a blue tick on the Rust. So yeah, what do we have? So 145 Cloverleaf. Which is the one that I wrote off. And actually, you could still see the damage of where that was written off up until about 2 years ago. So my 106 Rally was in for work, and my mum was using that car at the time. And it was snowing, and I used to work at Blue Water before I went to university, which is a shopping centre. I'm sure some of you know where it is.
I know it well.
It was snowing at the time. And you know when you come down the dual carriageway to go into it, and you can go left, this is very specific, left to M&S or kind of round that bend. There's a lamppost on that outside, right? It was snowing, and it was the first real time I'd driven in the snow, and obviously quite a powerful car, that 145 Cloverleaf, 2-litre twin-spark engine, 150 brake, I think. A bus kind of cut in front of me, rather than kind of trying to go round it normally, I kind of broke and then accelerated, which I now know is the wrong thing to do. Shot up the outside barrier around the outside, which was still crushed and bent till recently, and then hit the lamppost about, I don't know, 3 meters up, so it's quite a big impact.
Jeez.
Split the fuel tank, smashed all my face up, etc.
Wow.
And luckily, I was lucky that I hit the lamppost, because if you know Blue Water, it's just straight over the other side, otherwise into the thing, which probably wouldn't have been a very pretty sight if I'd actually got out of it. So I ended up, I left the car, rang the police, and walked into work. I worked at River Island at the time, and then my dad's dad, who isn't with us anymore, came to get us, but he was like, no, you probably need to go to hospital, because my whole face, like obviously airbag had gone off, ripped all my face up, cut all my leg and cut all my face and bleeding. So but he likes to remind me that I wrote that car off.
So yet another painful and expensive trip to Blue Water.
Yeah, exactly. So but then from the 145, so we had a 2-litre T-Spark 156, which came after an E55 AMG, very different, but surprisingly rusted less. And then a GTV V6 he had, which he had quite a lot of work done, like sort of GTA 147 GTA flywheel and cams and stuff put in it. So that was a good car. I didn't fit at all. So he's 5'8", 9. I'm 6 foot, 6'1", and I just no matter how low you get that, I can still remember even just when I passed my test, I just couldn't see unless you like crippled your neck down like that. It's like being in a G body or 964, 911 with a sunroof. I have to crip my neck from that sort of thing, same sort of thing. So yeah, lots of Alphas. Always loved Italian cars and character. So that's where that's from.
Very nice. You were just reminding me there, when I get in the car, because I'm 6'4", and my wife's not small, but when she's been in the car, she's obviously sort of fiddled with the mirrors and the seats and stuff. Quite often I'll just get in and start driving, and I don't change the seats or the mirrors. So I just sort of halfway through just kind of realised to myself, what am I doing? I'm just sort of like folded up here.
It's a strange thing. Luckily, because obviously if things get put back, I don't have to do that. Because if my dad borrows a car, I do have to do that. He's obviously a lot shorter than I am, but he's got longer legs than me. I've just got a really long body. He has everything really low, but the seat like really far back. I'll still get in a car and pull the seat forward a little bit, which is a really strange sensation when you kind of see us stood next to each other. But
is your mother tall? Where's this extra height coming from?
She's not with us anymore, but she was 5'8", 5'9". So yeah, she was taller.
I was just going to say, obviously there's quite a decent run of Alphas here, and I've seen that list, Joe. It's impressive of all the cars. So it seems to take a bit of a German turn, gets a bit serious with some BMs and Porsches. Is that right?
Yeah. So when they were worth £1,500 before the Alphas, he had a lot of what a W123. Well, I guess they're technically S123 estates, if I'm going to be really geeky. And now they were run by a bloke down in Welling, who used to say if you needed the car gone, he could get it lost for you. Bit of a strange business that's somehow still there.
I think Welling is very much like that still. Yeah.
It's just no, not Welling actually. Sorry, is it Welling? No, it was Lee. It was Lee. Sorry, into Hither Green. But yeah, so we got that, and then got the Alphas. But then I think he always missed he had a W210 E55 AMG. Which is the first really fast car that I remember. So I remember like friends coming around and going up. This was before the A2 had average speed cameras. When they still had the normal one, he took a couple of mates up and down that. And I remember that being like properly quick, actually, from that point of view. And then, yeah, the German thing then kicked back in then. So the 914 he got in from Tower Porsche, which I think still exists. I can remember going out in that in a test drive in central London, and it being a left-hand drive car, and just being like, why are all the buses coming towards me? This is before I could drive. It was a bit freaky. And kept hold of that, probably wanted to use it a lot more than he did, but we did loads of things like London to Brighton, etc. But then as he got older, I think probably my influence and kind of Evo Mag, really, like I'd buy it and then pass it to him saying, oh, come on, we've got to get one of these, we've got to try this, or we've got to get that, which I guess, Andy, to your point earlier, is where the influence kind of came back in. From that point of view.
Yeah.
So I think the first silly thing he bought was that KN Turbo, which he's still got.
I did see that on the list, and when I saw that he still had that, I thought that must be costing a bit just to keep going, really, especially the older ones, aren't they? Because the parts are particularly expensive, I think.
Yeah. I mean, to be even more stupid, John, it's now a Trans-Siberia rep as well. So it's fully stickered up. Orange wheels, massive BF Goodrich tyres on it, which even balanced to within an inch of their life, it is awful to drive. So imagine you've got that sort of loose rubber really on the road because it doesn't work on with the best part of 500 brake horsepower. It also has 2 of the 4 cats deleted and straight pipes pretty much into the rear box. So it is as loud as you can possibly imagine. It's a very juvenile car, but he absolutely loves it.
Glug, 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 glug.
It is shocking. It is absolutely shocking. And you have to...
Season ticket at Shell, yeah.
Yeah, and you have to run on super. So it just costs even more. Yeah. But I think it's because... So his mum's like 90 now, but she finds it really comfortable. Because it's got air suspension, actually, you can drop it right down to get her in and out. So I think that's probably why he's kept it, if I'm honest with you. But... yeah, and he now seems to be getting loads of attention for it. I think it's that Classics at the Lake thing that it's going to be on show there. People just like it. I think it looks ridiculous. So fair enough. I've actually got a Tamiya model of it that I bought on a cheap one, like a little remote control thing, which is quite fun. So yeah.
Nice. You have to send us a picture of that one.
Yeah.
Be good to see that.
It's not mine. My wife hates it. She's like, why is your dad driving? Because he's like a kid. Like it's often said at track days that since my mum passed away, I'm like the father and he's like the son in terms of where it goes from that. So that role reversal from a point of view.
I've got visions of your poor wife, Joe, just sitting indoors sort of thinking, what is he doing? What is his dad doing?
Honestly, when I first bought that catering back and I made a go, can you remember how hot it was last summer? And we went out in it. I think she was close to divorcing me. She was not happy. No, she was like, so uncomfortable. Miss these other cars. And as much as she probably wouldn't have admitted it, I think she actually quite liked us having a Porsche. Well, I mean, at one point I had a Macan and a GT3. Now I've got 2 old Mercs in a case room. It's kind of gone downhill a little bit, hasn't it?
Cost of living crisis happens to the best of us, doesn't it?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, the fact that both of those Mercs aren't worth half of what that case room is, and it's not even that like a quick one, it just shows you the ridiculousn's of the car market, right?
Did you get your dad into track stuff, or was he kind of doing that long before you?
Yeah, definitely. So I first did a track day in the 205 at Brands Hatch, the old taster sessions. I can remember getting into that, and he was furious with me at the time. He was like, why have you done this? It's really dangerous, rah. And then I got a Mini Cooper S, like an R53, which I spent a fortune on. And he started to come along with us, enjoy it. And then my dad being my dad, not being able to buy a normal track car, he bought a 147 GTA, which he had pretty much fully rebuilt onto sort of KWV3 coilovers, some bespoke Corbeau carbon Kevlar seats with full Alpha stitching made into it, different diff. And we took that to the Nürburgring, everything. But Pete, I think he likes things, this comes to the KN, always like things that are a bit different or not the norm, which is where the old Mercs come from or anything like that, right? And I probably get a little bit of that, if I'm honest with you. So he just started doing that more and more with me. After my mum died, I got a Cayman GTS, and he had a black 996 GT3 at the time, which I pushed him into doing a track day with that at Bedford, and I can remember him spinning twice on a sighting lap in the rain in that car. Distinctly actually at the back. I don't know if either of you have ever been to Bedford, but there's a long back straight. It's the most depressing place you'll ever do a track day. Most places in the UK are, if I'm honest with you, apart from Brands and Cadwell. But just going right down the back, I remember being in the car with him thinking, we're not in the Alpha here, Mark. We're doing at least 40 miles an hour quicker than we are not going to stop. And lo and behold, not only didn't we stop, we went backwards completely through the old outfield. And then the car flooded itself from a petrol point of view. So I had to go on the AA on the way home. It was all fixed under warranty. But I can remember being quite terrified at that point. But yeah, the track stuff I've definitely got him into. Last couple of years, we've done pretty much Spa, a double header every year, which is a great thing to do together. Good fun. But I kind of forced him. Apart from this year, I've done Destination Nürburgring, so 2 full open pit lane track days at the Nürburgring kind of every year, which is after doing TF in a 205 and seeing people die left, right, and centre on motorbikes. I kind of, that ain't for me anymore. So, of course, open pit lane track day is a much better thing to do. I convinced him to do that in the 997. Which he did with me, and it was raining in the morning. He was following me around, and I can distinctly remember getting up and I hate this. What have you done? Why have you made me drive this car here and round it? So, he won't do that anymore, but he loves Spa and stuff like that. We've shared his 997 a couple of times at Spa, but the value of it, if I'm honest with you, is great. I'm one of these people who use your cars, but at the same time, you really can't insure them for an affordable amount anymore on track. And you do feel like I'm going to have to sell my house if I put this in a wall. So that's kind of why I stopped doing it from that point of view, because as much as we get on, I'm not sure I could crash in a 145 globally for Blue Water's one thing, right? Putting a 997 GT3 Club Sport, a 0.2 as well, into the wall at Eau Rouge. It's quite different, I think.
That's the paid app again, isn't it? That is, compared to the...
Exactly. That's no thanks. So definitely, he definitely does that with me. But my cousin, who is like 3 days younger than me, my uncle with the Astra with the funny dash, he's got an R26R, so he's just had a baby, but we do the same sort of stuff together. We have done. He's had quite a few Porsches actually, from that side, so it's definitely a family thing. I mean, he's still got a GT4 and a GT3. They don't do enough mileage, in my opinion. Paul will kill me for saying that, but he has got a very busy life, to be fair. So
from a personal point of view, are there any vehicles you want to revisit kind of for your own ownership? Do you want to get back into an Alfa for yourself or anything like that?
Yeah, I'd love. I love that Busso engine, the V6 one. I wouldn't mind this shows you how I'm very old. Like a GTV Spider just for wafting around in would be lovely. I mean, it could be quite fun. The SL that I've just bought actually, which is a very acquired taste. It's like an aquamarine with a beige interior and wood.
Is that an R129?
Yes, it is. Yeah, so it's an SL320. So I've tried to jump on that before. I always buy things when they've got to the top of their value. I'm like, for the love of God, can I just get there a little bit before it goes crazy?
They've bottomed out, haven't they, at the moment? Pretty much. They can't go much cheaper, can they? No,
they can't, and they are ruthlessly complicated. But I bought that probably because the W123s that he had when I was a kid, I very much distinctly remember that sort of old Merc feel. Like it's the sort of, you shut the door, if your hand's in it, you're not crushing it, it's coming off.
Yeah.
There's so many memories, and this is really anal, but even the way the torque converter kicks down in that old straights is exactly the same as it is in the SL, and it just reminds me of that sort of family adventure.
I think it's probably a good shout going for what you've gone for, because it's probably just modern enough, isn't it? If you go 123, it's just a bit too old, isn't it, really?
Yeah, there's not much metal left there either. They all need welding. I mean, the thing that is scary, I think we used to buy those 123 estates for 1,500 quid. There's one for sale at the moment for 40 grand.
Yeah,
which is just
that's
like
crazy. That's proper antique dealer's car, that as well, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
Get the old
but we had the 7 seats in the back of it, so I used to remember, even though I'm an only child, I'd go in the back while they were right in the front.
They're facing the wrong way.
Yeah, that's the ones. Yeah.
Yeah. Millennium Falcon sort of Starship Enterprise or B-52 bomber stuff. I loved it.
Isn't that insane to think that, you know, if somebody does smash you in the rear, you would just be looking your killer in the eye, basically, as a child. Who signed that one off? Insane, really, isn't it?
It's also, I can remember my uncle had a Volvo 850. This is when he went through his sensible phase, because he sold that after he had a Sierra Cosworth, and went very sensible, had that. And that had the seats in the back. And I distinctly remember when the Millennium Wheel first opened. And my cousin used to get car sick, but he used to want to go in the back. And it was like, we'll go up in this Volvo. And he's vomiting in this like inch deep Tupperware while I'm sat next to him looking out the back of this. It's one of my most horrific memories I think I've ever had. I could still remember it just being like, please get me out of here. But they were cool, those backs.
It's such a strange concept, isn't it, having the seats facing the other way? Kind of like you're on safari or something.
It's really weird.
No.
And it's not like you have depth. So your legs are like round your ears, like in terms of where you are. So, but no, great fun cars, lots of memories, and full of character, right, in terms of where it is. And the seats are just, it's funny, you get in a car now. I remember being inherently more comfortable in the cars my old man had to what I get in now. Even my Merc's only like an E350 diesel, right? It's 2013. It's rock hard. Whereas those old wafters that used to, even the Cavalier, like they're really thick, spongy, like those seats, right? In terms of where
balloon tyres as well.
Yeah, exactly.
It's probably got something to do with all the old stuff just catching fire like really well.
Yeah.
In the event of a crash or something.
Yeah, true. Yeah. It's like flammable, isn't it? Like an old smoke alarm commercial.
So it sounds as if, I mean, clearly your dad, like he's got oil running through his veins by the sounds of things. Any sort of habits that you can remember of him when he was driving? Finger tapping being the big one that we always ask.
Do you know what, actually? This is more of a habit he has when you're following him. And this is someone from works in London. He's got like a Vespa and he's had various other scooters beforehand, actually. So he's used to zipping in and out, right? Since I've moved to the country, what he's kept this habit up that he obviously had when I was a child is like, I'm just going to get through the lights. And he just leaves you everywhere. It's a really annoying thing. So, you know, if you're going in a convoy, right? It doesn't matter whether there's 20 cars behind him or one. He's gone. And it's like, and that definitely is something that he had growing up, I think, in terms of he's always been very safe, very, very safe, but he's slowed down in his old age, but he did used to drive quite quickly, I think, from not dangerously, but definitely. I can remember a few times thinking, oh, I remember in one of the other podcasts, one of the first times someone went over 100, that was a real thing. That was a frequent thing, like frequent. Yeah, never in towns or cities, but definitely, yeah, quite fast from a driving point of view from that perspective. Yeah, I'm trying to think. And I guess always music. He never not, and even to this day, he will never not have music on in the car. Whereas I'm quite happy to sit and I don't mind not having music on sometimes. But yeah, it's almost the first thing he does when he gets in the car and put the stereo on. I think thinking back, that was definitely something as a kid with that point of view.
Nice.
Did he get involved with the Sunday car cleaning on the drive?
Absolutely. I used to do that all the time. I loved it. It was a way of getting involved a little bit more. But then when I first learned to drive, I got what I thought was intimate detailing. I was like, oh, you need to do all this sort of stuff. And I can remember just being like, what? This is ridiculous. Why are you doing all this? But he subsequently he's quite happy to just sit and do that for hours. It's a way of passing time. But yeah, definitely got involved in all the car cleaning, I think, and also helping a little bit. I can remember his 914 had a twin Dell'Otto conversion from injection. And I remember he's quite mechanical. I'm not. I'm 100% a keyboard fairy from a work perspective. I remember working with him to balance the carbs out after he just had them rebuilt, but we forgot to open the garage. So we sat there almost gassing ourselves with a thing. I can still remember that sort of feeling in your eyes from doing it. So yeah, helped him with all of that sort of stuff. And then I remember on the Merc specifically that they were massive, but because they had shiny bits when I was a kid, like the chrome, it was quite nice to clean them in terms of where it is.
Yeah, we used to do that. My dad's Merc, that was what made it kind of, I think you could give the kids that job of doing it because you just clean the chrome up and it all looked all good. Which it did. Yeah, no, that definitely resonates. Yeah.
So no, I enjoyed, and vacuuming was always my job because my mum smoked. Always one side of the car would have like ash in the back of it, and it was just like, right, clean as much as I could from out there. I do remember being given that job. That feels a little bit like slave labour when I think about it now, but it is what it is.
Did your mum drive your dad's cars?
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. So she, 10 years ago. No, God, when did she die? Probably 8 years ago. So when she used to run St Christopher's Hospice in Sydenham, and she used to daily drive that E55 there and back from Blackheath to Sydenham through all the pinch points and stuff like that. It got hit a couple of times and stuff like that. So I can remember that was a pain. She curbed 2 of the wheels on the dimmer and popped both the tyres. I remember that as a kid because tried to claim they'd been knifed. Now, they weren't knifed in West Dartford. So I distinctly remember that. She had her own cars for a little bit, little like Nissan Micras when she was a district nurse for a little bit. But yeah, she always drove them. They always went together. There was like 914 never.
Yeah. GTV
never. But the family car, if it were, in inverted commas, which often was something a bit spicy, she would, yeah, from that point of view.
I've got a bit of a soft spot for 914s. Did your dad have the 914 as a toy, or was that his daily driver?
No, toy. So he always, again, when I come back to like that, I guess this is a real theme from him, always wanting something a bit different and interesting. So he'd always loved the 914. I can remember at the time it was a decision between the 914 or this is when they were like, they were not much money at all, invert commas, or a 308 GT4 Dino. Do you remember what, like the 4-seat Dino thing? They were a little bit more money, but still comfortably less than sort of 15 grand. But in the end decided, let's save some more money and got the 914. And yeah, he'd always kind of just wanted a car to play with. I think that was a bit special and it felt attainable from that perspective. So yeah, grew up with that. It had a couple of mods done to it. There's a picture of it, which I think I might have sent you actually, but it always just looks a bit spicier than a lot of the other 914s you see. It was a little bit lower, had 320i brakes on it. Obviously the twin Delarottos sounded pretty special.
Yeah.
And then a fully bespoke exhaust, which I can remember when we just had that one. And have you ever had an exhaust made or anyone like sort of, you must do in your world, you must have seen one when they first bed in, the packing pops and bangs. And I can remember driving through Blackheath in it and like old women thinking there were shots going off and stuff like that because it just spitting flames out the back. But I've got a very distinct memory of the first time we had a Porsche Club membership when we were younger. Obviously I did up until recently, but it was less kind of open than it is now. It used to be a little bit more snooty, if I'm honest with you. And I can remember going up to the AGM at that funny place in Oxfordshire in the 914 and just being like, Jesus, like we shouldn't be here. Everyone else is a millionaire and sort of parking around the corner. But still a great experience going up and down. Did I think 4 London to Brightons with him in it, which was good. Obviously that's where Sterling Moss picture is. But yeah, he loved it. He didn't use it as much as he wanted to. And I think he sold it and he went to Germany, I think, in the end. But I've still got a load of 914 images on my walls and stuff like that. Now, it's a car that holds quite a special place in my heart because it's something that we always did together, if you get what I mean. Yeah. It was just a bit cool and different.
Would you want one? Would you buy one?
Yeah, I would love one. There's a guy, I think his name's Stephen actually, who's got a silver one, which he's rebuilt completely with flares and a 6-pot in it. I would love one. There's Tuttles have just done one with obviously checkbook build, right, in terms of where it is. But it's the same colour. It's I can't remember what it's called now, but it's like a metallic blue. I wish I could remember what it's called. But it's just, it's got deep dish fooks on it, but they're polished and it just looks awesome. I just think it's something a bit different when everyone else is knocking around in a sort of a 911 or whatnot. It just feels a bit different. And he very, very nearly bought at the same time a 944 Turbo, like a silver car. And I distinctly remember going to look at that and just thinking it just feels different and something that people don't have. And it felt like you got more for less money, if that makes sense, because you had a different experience that people wanted to talk to you about. So I think that's probably why I would like to buy back into it, really, if I'm honest with you. They're just, I think he sold his for $7,000 and it was far nicer than some of the rubbish you see for like 15 and 20. And I think that's the problem now. I'd love one, but what's the value of it, if you get what I mean, Andy, from that perspective? So no, but great cars, really, really cool, just different.
I remember sitting in them as a kid. So my dad was a coach trimmer.
That's an art.
And he had kind of a big workshop, and then he lived in a flat above it. And I didn't grow up with my dad. I used to go and visit him kind of every 3 weeks or so.
Yeah.
And the first thing we'd do, like, as soon as I'd kind of got back to his place, I'd go down into the workshop and just see what there was.
Yeah.
And I remember he had a white, I think it was white 914 in there that he'd done like a leather dash on it.
Yeah.
And just remember sitting in it as kind of probably 12, 13-year-old, and it's your size. It's kind of
it's cool, isn't it? Yeah.
It's like sitting in a Mini as a 10-year-old. It's like, this is my size. And in that situation, thinking, actually, I really like this. I'd love to get into one of those. But yeah, they are
amazing to drive. From what you told, great mid-engine handling, good fun, really planted sort of thing. They are cool.
My wife's going to listen to this. She's like, "You're not getting a 914." She's already told me I can't have another Mini.
I can remember from a 914 perspective, it's the most burnt I've ever got into, because that vinyl, I can remember it was a Bromley pageant car show. We used to go there all the time. Yeah. Got back into it, and obviously the target top, he never had the target top off, and got back in it and just sitting down on that thing with the bare skin being like 14, head-butting the windscreen because it just burnt like you wouldn't believe. The only thing ever hotter than that is like a McDonald's apple pie or a cheese and tomato toasty. Do you know that sort of thing? But yeah, no, great cars. I would definitely have one back. Do you know what? It actually says quite a lot. Apart from a couple, I'd probably, if I won the lottery and I had a huge unit, most of the cars that I have memories of with my father and my mum together growing up, I probably would buy back, because there's so many happy adventures, right? Whether it's the journey or whatever it is, and it's the smell of something or something like that, or the way something makes you feel. I definitely would. I think it's a good question, that.
Did your dad, did he go to kind of car dealerships to buy stuff, or was he kind of free papers, Auto Trader?
We always had Auto Trader in the house. I remember that sort of thing. It's mad to think you used to sell a car in a box that big with little details on it. But no, Auto Trader, so private deals, and later on, so the Mercs were definitely, they were off dealerships, but never, like, he's never ever had, and he's quite proud of this actually, a brand new car. Yeah. He's never bought something out of a dealership brand new. He's always been, I don't know why he's quite proud of that, but it's like a thing that for him, I think. I
guess that's grounding to a certain extent.
I mean, there's still some spicy stuff in there, Andy. So
absolutely. But
I don't think you get on your high horse when you bought a 997 GT3 from JZM when you go, but I've not bought a brand new Clio. All right then, Mark. But I used to we'd go in them together, I think, which was a thing that you do. And I always like brochures and stuff like that, but he's always collected things. So he's still got, it kind of shows you what sort of a guy he is, all of his original Corgi models when he's a kid. He's still got them all, but they're all still in the box.
Wow.
Yeah. So he's always been a sort of a collector-y sort of, I must have all this sort of little stuff like that. So, definitely going around to see things when I was younger, sort of thing.
Cool. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to kind of share? Is anything you were like, I really want to talk about that?
I don't think so, really. Thing that I liked, that I think is quite important from the podcast, I think quite a lot, and it's actually the fact that it doesn't have to be a really sporting thing. To your point, it's that memory, right? In terms of when you bring it up, it's a moment in time, like that. I think if you're a petrol head or you like cars, often your dad's car can be like, I don't know, a version of that summer garden that you always spent at your nan's or something like that, and I think that's quite an interesting concept. But I think probably why I liked the idea of the podcast so much, in that it just feels a little bit looking more at a moment in time in a way to talk about things and that, and kind of, sometimes things are unsaid. Like, actually, how many happy times have you had? Like you said, even like going to your dad's as a trimmer and going downstairs. It might not have been his car, that 914, but there's a moment there that's a happiness of when you had a nice time there, right, or whatever. Yeah. And that, if you look at a lot of the stuff that we have the fortune of going to now, right, there's a lot of kids that I think get dragged is the wrong word, but taken to events where it's the same stuff that people are just looking out week in, week out, that kind of, what's the adventure that you've gone on together? Like, whether it's going to play like a kid that always plays football and their dad could always get all the football kit in the back, something like that. There's something in there which I feel is probably a little bit lost now, in terms of what that adventure is and where you are, especially because so much you can get just to your phone now, right? So you don't have to go and do anything. So those journeys aren't as great as they are. And especially if you live in London, right, in the centre of town,
Yeah,
how
yeah.
many people actually go on journeys in their cars as much as they used to? So that's all chat. It's a fundamental that your my dad's car thing. How long will that exist anymore? I think that's a really interesting point. So I'm 35, right? You probably got 2 generations after me. I mean, I think that'll be it.
Yeah, for me, I used to travel. So I'm down on the south coast. My dad was in Kent. So he used to travel up and then he'd bring me back on a Sunday evening. And that was kind of an hour and a half or so quality time. I guess we'd spend some time with my stepmom, my sister and stuff. And we'd probably watch like the Formula One or whatever, have a roast and everything. But that time was, just kind of us time. And that was obviously getting to know more about him or kind of what his work was and all the rest of it. So it was just you and your dad in this sort of isolated capsule, effectively traveling down the motorway for that amount of time. And as a parent now, it also brings into to the forefront really how much time he spent traveling to see me, which is kind of really flattering. Like he would have done on a Sunday, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours traveling or something, and then we'd have ended up with 4 or 5 hours at his place or whatever. But that was a lot of driving for that kind of thing.
Quite powerful, right? Yeah. And if you think about it, that the vehicle that you did that in is obviously it's a space which you did it, and the importance of it is that it's not the fact that it's got, I don't know, triple Webers, 6-pot, like sort of thing. It's kind of nothing to do, and I think that's what I quite like about it. Is the thing that I've spent the most time with my dad on is a little moped. So when I was younger, because my mum used to work nights and stuff, like if we got to town on a Saturday or something for a walk around, he had a Peugeot Speed Fight until he had his CVT, and the two of us had used to try and get up to the top of Shooters Hill on it and stuff like that. I have so many memories of just being on the back of a moped, let alone all the special cars he's had, right? And I think to your point, it is that journey and that quality time and realising kind of what role that vehicle played in enabling that, I think, which is probably the thing that I think is quite special. Because I'm so lucky now, right? If you said, what's your favourite journey? Oh, I've driven to the Nürburgring and back in my dad's 997 GT3, or we drove to Tuscany together through the Alps a couple of years ago, him in a 964, the Ruby Stone RS car, me in a Cayman R. That's about as first world cool as you can get, right? They are some amazing memories, but the stuff that I had that you said, like just the two of us in his 914 doing the London to Brighton, me trying to work out a tulip map, or me hanging off the back of a scooter going up to Shooters Hill, they're probably as special because it's that time, right, in terms of where it is. Which I think to your first question is probably why the idea of the podcast resonates so much, because the vehicle's the thing that makes you realize how special that time with that person is, which you just nailed on the head, right? So
well, I think let's wrap it up. So, massively appreciate the support for what we're doing and kind of getting on board with it, and obviously you sharing your stories, giving us an hour of your time, and it's been good fun.
Thanks for joining us, Joe.
Nice to meet you, John.
Lots of good tales there. Lots of good cars as well.
Oh, don't worry about it.
Thanks so much, Joe.
Thanks, Andy.
Bye-bye. Bye. Cool. So that was Joe. And I think we've had our first write-off story.
Yeah. Hopefully not too many more of those. I think Joe certainly goes into the, I don't want to say nerd category, but I mean, that is a guy that is loving his cars and has obviously been fully thrown into it thanks to his dad, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It was pretty techie, wasn't it? There was some numbers there which were kind of, you knew your Mercs, but they were kind of just going over my head. It was like, we'll just nod and say yes. And I was
quite proud to get the R129 correct.
totaled an Alfa. Let's hopefully we don't have any more of those. And some pretty cool cars as well. Some Porsches in there. The R14 I've got a massive soft spot for. 996, 997, track days.
Proper petrol head territory, isn't it? Track days, Alphas, Porsches.
Yeah.
Minis. Yeah, that's some good stuff there. I think we could have spent the whole day talking to Joe, couldn't we?
Yeah, like we said in the episode, a big thanks to him really for the support with what we're doing, and kind of, I think he's really got on board with it and sort of understood that it is more than your dad's car. So
yeah, no, it's really good, and it helps us obviously because we're just starting out on this, finding our way. So when someone comes along and actually seems to be enjoying what we're doing, that really helps, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
You might have noticed, listeners, that I did sort of fade out quite dramatically in that episode. I had to make a little dash to to go and get children from school. So I hadn't fallen asleep. It was just I had made a dash. So apologies for that.
Yeah, that was episode 5, I think. And we've got some more in the works. So we're gathering speed.
We are gathering pace. And I think all the recordings we've done so far, we're really enjoying them. And there's some good ones coming up, isn't there, Andy?
Absolutely. So, I guess give us a like, subscribe, follow, tell all your friends. And with that, we'll roll some credits. Thanks, John.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Thanks for tuning into My Dad's Car. We're new at this and really appreciate you listening and supporting the podcast. If you enjoyed it, please click subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Give us a follow on social media and tell your friends to tune in too if you think it will be up their street.